Gibson. You're my first guest of my rebranded podcast. I'm now calling the show On Air Jordan, and
Fantastic.
reached out to close friends that I had hoped wouldn't say no. So thank you for accepting my invitation. Like my previous podcast, my first question is always to ask my guests to tell the story of how we met. And I'm curious to know if you remember this one.
Well, many years ago, there was this community that evolved out of Twitter, which was, like when we all first got on it, and there was these tweet ups. And this goes back to, what would it be, like 2007, maybe 2008. So there was this group of social media nerds, which we really were, who were geeking out about this new tool. And I believe it was at one of those meetups that we originally connected, I think, or a related event. And that's my vague memory. But there was, at that time, a lot of networking and cocktails involved. So the memory of one event kind of bleeds into the other. But is that what you recall? What was the specific? Do you remember
I think I can do you one better.
Yeah.
I think specifically that it was an Uber Tour meetup, one of those ones that was arranged with meetup.com. So we're really dating ourselves here. But I think it was an Uber Tour meetup, and I want to say that it was like upstairs in the Irish pub on
Cayley's.
Granville. Cayley's.
Steve Jagger and Michael Stevenson would do their sales, their real estate tech meetup, and they ran those for years. And you're right, that's would be one of those events. Those predated the tweet ups, actually, for sure.
Yeah,
But,
exactly. So then we would have seen each other at subsequent tweet ups and stuff. And I'm still very impressed with your answer because it was accurate. We were a wily group of internet nerds. I marvel at this all the time, that interest in social media was the thing that we all had in common.
Yes.
And now it's like, it pervades everyone's lives. But at the time it was like, hey, the social web is this thing, and this tiny group of people that care enough about that to meet up in person. Like, just the irony and and how far we've come since, I think is. And actually that segues into my next question, is just how much has changed in the meantime. The social media landscape, the tools, so much has changed. And I just want you to speak to that. How do you feel about the state of things today?
There's a lot that's changed, and nothing has changed in kind of the same way. So when Steve Jagger and I wrote Sociable, which was one of the first books on social media marketing written, there was 8 books that came out, and we're too late when we wrote it back in 2009. And we had these principles, these rules of engagement around building community, creating valuable content, listening, making connections, being persistent, not spamming people. And the list was, and then, Google Plus came out, and we're like, oh no, it's another platform. Maybe the rules will be different, right? And then we looked at it and we realized it's the rules applied different. So a lot of the core principles like community building, connection, contribution, consistency, those remain the same. Even when you look at it TikTok, for example, around constant presence, adding value, connecting, building community, outreaching to other thought leaders, a lot of those principles are the same, right? So the principles haven't changed, but the platforms and the attention spans and the fracturing of attention spans has definitely changed. And of course, social media has a much bigger dark side now, if you want to get into social issues, than it had back then. But the reality is today's buyer, because I deal a lot with business to business sales training and strategy, is on 20 plus channels, right? And, 8 or 9 of those are social. There's other digital channels. And then there's, the real world in real life stuff. And so for today's sales professional or marketer, you have to find a way to be present on all the channels your buyers are on to engage them. And this is where AI comes into place, because I don't think that you can actually do that without automation and AI assistance at any scale. So that's what's changed, is you need to be in more places with the same intensity that you and I used to just be on Twitter, right?
Right.
So that's my long kind of answer to what's changed. Yeah.
I think the obvious follow-up is what channels are you, Shane, present on in today's current environment, and how involved?
Yeah, so LinkedIn, right? So LinkedIn, of course, is a big one because of my audience. Being that I deal with business leaders, that's my senior sales leaders, engaging them so that I can work with their organization to help their teams improve their sales performance. So that's a big one. Instagram, though, primarily, like TikTok's, I'm on there producing much the same content as TikTok, but not necessarily seeing the same traction on TikTok. Your B2B decision maker still isn't on there. I meet a lot of other people like me, other
Sure.
sales
Yeah.
trainers talking to each other. But Instagram is a really good channel for today for actually kind of connecting on a personal level with business decision makers, which I find interesting, and then telling your story to your community. So like for social channels, obviously YouTube, right? I still have people debate like, X has now become a bit of a dumpster fire, so to speak, the, former Twitter platform. I'm still on there to gather business intelligence and just to be aware of kind of what's going on in the world from a different lens, because I think it's important not to live in our bubble. Some people may criticize me for that, but I'm on there as well. But today, you know what? Biggest business generators for me are search engine optimization, YouTube Shorts, and then LinkedIn probably is really where my business is coming from.
Excellent. I imagine that is going to be a clip that I put on YouTube Shorts. So there's a,
Yeah.
meta component to that
There you
response.
go.
Are you anywhere else? Are you on any of the Fediverse stuff, Blue Sky, Mastodon, things like that?
Blue
Are you
Sky,
venturing out?
I found that, man,
Threads?
I worked my butt off with Twitter, years ago, going from like 0 to 30,000 plus connections, and LinkedIn 17,000. And I guess what I get as I look at Blue Sky and I realize I know what it takes to build up a following. And based upon an ROI perspective, I think it's important to be present there. But I'm really in a different mode of my business and my personal life, right? So if I was going to devote an extra 3 to 5 hours a week or day to build up a following, I think I'd rather devote that time to practicing martial arts or hiking, to be honest. And so I'm already got some good beachheads on other platforms. Maybe in the future if it takes off, but early days, right?
Fair. Yeah. I like to start these shows with a bit of activity right out of the gate.
Yeah.
It bugs me when, you fire up a podcast and then they waste 2 minutes talking about the person's bio, etc. But I think it behooves me to share who it is I'm talking to. So I'm going to quickly read the bio that I took from your website, and then we'll start getting into Shane's expertise. Shane Gibson is an international keynote speaker and an author on digital reinvention, social selling, and sales performance who has addressed over 200,000 people. Imagine that number's gone up since this was written. On stages in Canada, the United States, South Africa, Zimbabwe, India, Dubai, Malaysia, Chile, Colombia, Mexico, and Brazil. Shane Gibson is number 5 on the Forbes.com list of the top 30 social sales people in the world. And who better than to answer my next question, which is, how has the sales function changed since you started as a sales trainer? So we're not going back to the beginning of time, when Shane decided social selling is the thing. This is what I want to teach people. You started Professional Sales Academy. How much has changed in that time?
There's kind of going back to my original answer, like what's changed in social media is the principles, the human psychology hasn't changed, right? So best practices in engaging people, empathy, listening, being relevant, having customized solutions based upon the needs of the organization you're talking with, having a solid sales process to follow so you're consistent. Like a lot of those things haven't changed. With that said, what we talked about earlier, the buyers changed. So the buyers become more sophisticated. Buyers on 20 plus channels. So you as a salesperson are not really a source of information anymore. Like most people, when they reach out to you in any industry, they're already 80% of the way through the buying cycle. And so you're needing to not be showing them features, advantages, benefits, and telling them about your product or advantages. You're now partnering with them to develop a custom solution or outcome. So you are It's no longer a nice to have to be a trusted advisor and highly knowledgeable. It's in fact the core function of sales professionals today. So what's happening is the buyer, if they can't be made smarter and you can't enhance them, if you're just taking orders, they don't need you. They can go to a platform. So how sales has changed is, A, you really need to be a more sophisticated solution seller and a person who partners and understands your clients. And B, back to what we talked about, today's sales professional needs to be on multiple channels, online, offline, and often the sales process can go online and offline multiple times. Like I'll meet you in person, we have a Zoom meeting, we interact on LinkedIn, I send you a proposal through a platform that you can review, and then we hop on a call together and meet in person at an event, and that's your sales cycle today. So salespeople have to be very flexible with their online and offline skill set, but people skills, because a lot is automated and done digitally, are even more important as a differentiator. So it's a bit of a dichotomy. It's like more digital tools, but amping up your competitive advantage, which is your people skills. And that's changed a bit. Like in the past, salespeople could just kind of take orders or know generic features and benefits. Your buyer is demanding more, and you have to be social and digital online. And then going back to, you have to leverage tools like AI. And that's one of the biggest changes that the last 36 months has really changed the sales function through artificial intelligence.
Your ideal audience or your client tends to be one that has a sales team. That sales team requires training, etc. Whereas I deal with early stage founders who do founder-led sales. And so I just want to shift, bearing in mind that that's the audience I'd like to capture. I want to talk about your thoughts on founder-led sales, picturing somebody who might be a product first founder, maybe technical, somewhat engineering based, and because of budgets, runway, etc., the sales function falls to them. What are your thoughts on founder led sales and whether those people should endeavor to develop that skill?
One of my thoughts is, there's so much to unpack, right? It's always that the answer you never want to hear a consultant give you, which is it depends. And the reality is it depends upon the situation with the individual in that role, right? Like, do they have the foundation, the desire to go out there and actually sell their solution? Or are they truly a technical founder, which is devoid of a marketing and sales founder? Like, do they need to find somebody? Like, if they're so far away from it that it's totally out of their personality style, their profile, their desire, their values, what they want to do, they might be better off to find a partner, right? But with that said, even someone in that role, if you don't have that luxury, you're running your organization, you're kind of haphazardly selling, and you just want to hire someone and give it away, there's a big danger in that, because if you don't have an intimate knowledge of sales process, best practices, checks and balances, then what happens is you're giving up your destiny to somebody else that you've hired. That's dangerous. So even if you're not going to do the sales function, you have to understand the sales function and have best practices. And so, from that perspective, even if you're not going to sell, it's a real big liability to be ignorant of sales as a leader, because you're not going to be able to manage that function or lead the team or even know if they're on track, right? So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's my first kind of thought process behind that.
I think it answers the question. My follow-up that I had written was to ask what advice you have for them. And I think you've given a good, comprehensive amount of advice that is realistic. I like to encourage people to give it a shot,
100%. And I think that, and I'm sure, you advise them to do this, is that if you don't have a background in sales, find a solid sales methodology that resonates with you. So whether you take a Shane Gibson course on selling to give you the fundamentals, or you get one-on-one, bespoke coaching and direction from Jordan, or you go off and buy Jim Keenan's GAP selling process, but follow a methodology and a process, right? Make sure that you're not spending a year through trial and error figuring out things that have already been mapped out, right?
I think this is a great segue too into when we were setting this up, you sent me to your sales conversation coach, Custom GPT, which is an example of a methodology, or at least a feedback tool that someone can use. The idea being that you input your sales script or your recorded call transcript into your custom GPT, and it gives you an analysis.
Yes.
And just to kind of give away the ending here, I tried it, and we'll talk about that in a second.
Fantastic.
But tell me about the, how it works and the idea behind it, and, that maybe the way you use it or you encourage others to use it.
Yeah, so I took my methodologies. So I've got a program called The Art of Asking Questions, and it is a specific process around really connecting and opening up the conversation with a client in a discovery call. So, really expanding it so that you're helping them see opportunities they don't see, risks they weren't aware of. And actually, it's not just about taking an order or finding needs, it's making them aware of the full opportunities that we could provide them as an organization. So these methodologies are based upon active listening, the types of questions we ask, and how we lead them to the next step. So there's a manual I uploaded. I uploaded 2 keynote transcripts on the topic, number of my PowerPoints, and some of the methodologies, and I basically, through the GPT, gave it a process on how to coach people through it. And so what it does is it takes a transcript of a sales call, and based upon my teachings and methodologies and best practices, we'll give you feedback on how you can improve those sales calls. So for me, one of the pains is, even when I go and coach a sales organization, this is how it started, is I'll go in and they've got a team of 8 salespeople and I've got to evaluate them. I used to listen to their sales calls for 8-10 hours. Now I can feed them into this, and in 5 minutes, it tells me where Jordan and Sarah and Paul and Henry are doing well and not doing well. And it can allow me to know what I need to focus on to help the team, right? So for me, it's an in-house tool, but we are going to wrap it in something else and make it as a pay-per-use or subscription-based tool that sales leaders can use to assess their team members, and so individuals can use to improve. So that's what AI does, right? AI can take a manual process and expertise and actually scale it, right? And so that for me is pretty exciting because it saves people time, but it also, if someone doesn't want to pay us, $1,000 an hour for sales performance coaching, they can get it for $10 a month, right? It's a way to help more people, right?
Yeah. In my case, I think with custom GPTs presently, you have to be a subscriber to use them, which I am. And I didn't have a sales transcript, but I did want to try the tool. So what I did was I took some of the copy from my sales page on my website.
Oh, cool.
And I asked it to analyze that, and I got reams of information, tons of value. So if you're watching this and you want to give it a try, I encourage you to do so. But for fun, and because it's a podcast, I also clicked the button that says, give me this same analysis in the voice of David Goggins, who I'm a fan of. I think,
yes.
I think the world, sometimes we need a David Goggins, maybe video to pop up in our feed to remind us to suck it up and carry on. Stay hard, my friend. Who's going to carry the boats? So for fun, I just want to quickly read through the output. Now, again, tons of valuable information, and then a snippet, David Goggins breakdown at the end. And this is now, I guess, in the voice of David Goggins, his advice for me. Stop making excuses. Founders know they need to post more, but they procrastinate. Your job is to obliterate those excuses and make the cost of inaction crystal clear. You don't sell social media, you sell momentum. I'll probably skip over some of the rest and just get to the final pitch reframe. I think this now is how I'm supposed to speak in the David Goggins voice to my clients to get them to get off their asses. You're already doing founder-led sales. Make sure that when you DM a prospect, they already know who you are, respect your expertise, and want to talk. Now go close some deals.
Awesome.
It's all in good fun, right? But
absolutely, yeah. And I'm not sure in the commercial bot that the voice of David Goggins will be in there. It might have to be reworded to drill sergeant or something.
It's a good hook. It's a good hook,
Yeah,
right? And sometimes, and this is the thing, is like you do this as well as me, where sometimes things get to a point where a little bit of tough love will get the job done. And if you can pass the buck to a David Goggins GPT to dole out that tough love, as opposed to having to say it out loud yourself, there's no harm in that, I don't think.
100%. Yeah. And it's a bit of fun. Yeah, at this point, it was interesting to try to have a professional ChatGPT, which sounds like me, which maybe is a bit buttoned down and straightforward in sales process. And then how do I program it so that I can give it an alter ego through a command? For now,
well, I saw that and I thought, this is perfect. Like I go to the gym all the time. When I happen upon a David Goggins video in my feed, I'm not mad. I think it's great. Yeah. So I thought that was a fun little way, a good hook to get me to use it, right? Like it was.
And my favorite quote from him is that the only thing that will change your DNA is discipline. And and that's a really powerful one about creating habits, and even the DNA of your sales culture. The only thing that will change it is discipline. It's like disciplined use of process and tools, and doing the hard thing until it becomes automatic. And I think that's for me, that's why I like his stuff, because I'm a Vancouverite. I could be guilty of having a latte at 3 p.m. instead of making sales calls, because I felt like it, right? So
sure, yeah. But you got to stay hard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where does Shane turn for his inspiration? Do you have coaches or do you have gurus that you follow that you, aside from the David Goggins example?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm constantly like reading or doing audiobooks, right? So this is one of the things is that, what's interesting is when you read, like an audiobook is someone else talking to you, which is great. And when you're reading, it's a form of self-talk, because you're actually reading these positive words. And so even if you have a negative dialogue going on, but you force yourself to read for half an hour twice a day, you're getting an hour of positive self-talk, right? So that for me, reading is an important piece. And then, I do have mentors for different parts of my life, and there's overlap, of course. But Fred Shadian has been a long time martial arts teacher, mentor, and friend of mine, and really peak performance, grounded. He's a guy who lives a very balanced life. He's a strong mentor to me. And then Dr. Dennis Covier, who's written, I should know by now, but he's written, let's say, 30 books on human resources and other performance, and he's spoken in 50 plus countries around the world. He's a mentor. So I plug into my mentors, and they're both friends as well, of course, on a regular basis. And then I find my inspiration through learning, like doing new things, so new experiences. That's a big one for me. The forest, like I run at least a couple times a week, if not 3 or more, in the forest, out at UBC or in North Vancouver. That is inspiring for me, right? It gives me a perspective beyond the box, beyond the screen. So that's where I find my motivation, is through my mentors, through my martial arts, through movement, right? That's for me what it does for me.
Yeah, I figured it was a pretty safe bet that you have done a bunch of reading and follow a lot of gurus as you have over the years. And one fun little hook that I wanted to do in my podcast was to have a blind ranking fun little exercise. So we're going to take a little break here and get a little less serious.
All right.
And what I'm going to do is, and I haven't done this before, so bear with me. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to reveal the names of 5 self-help gurus and authors, and I want you to blind rank them from 1 to 5. So you don't know what's coming. We have only talked about the fact that we were going to do this exercise. You don't know the names that I'm going to say, but as I say them, you have to decide if they are in the 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 spot.
All right.
Okay. Are you ready? Blind ranking.
I hope these are none of my
self-help
friends,
gurus.
and then I rate them a 3 or something.
I think they're all best-selling author types that we've heard from
Should
plenty.
be good.
And so the first one, Brene Brown.
Brene Brown. 5.
Gonna put Brene Brown in the number 5 spot. Okay. Stephen R. Covey.
3.
7 Habits in the number 3 spot. Okay. Brian Tracy.
4.
Brian Tracy's in the number 4. Okay. Les Brown.
Well, he's going to have a 2. He should have probably been the 5, but I'll give him a 2.
Okay. See, this is how the thing. You, you don't know what's coming.
So,
okay. And that means that by default, in the number 1 spot is Dale Carnegie.
hey, I agree with that. That's awesome.
You're not mad about that, yeah?
Not
okay.
mad about How to Win Friends and Influence People. Dale Carnegie's teachings is really interesting around like listening more than you talk, for instance, truly digging deeper and understanding the other person, active listening skills. A lot of it is in my Art of Asking Questions program, which is also, like it's those foundational principles drive a lot of sales trainers stuff around how to have a great discovery call. If you peel back the layers, Dale Carnegie is there. So yeah, I'm happy with number 1. I honestly probably would skip the other 4. I mean, Stephen Covey, he's okay, but I find there's a lot better stuff out there nowadays, right? The world's evolved.
I have this thing that I've realized that I'm perfectly okay with is that when I read a book like that, first of all, you get all the value in the first 2 or 3 chapters, right? Everybody's just sort of padding the end. But I might take away about 10% of a book like that and then implement 5 to 10% of it if I'm lucky. And I feel like that's a win. That was the book paid for itself. James Clear's Atomic Habits, like if you adopt 2 or 3 good habits after reading Atomic Habits, it paid for itself like 50 times over. And so I'm okay with that. If I read 7 Habits or How to Win Friends and Influence People and you start using people's names more often, it paid for itself.
Yeah.
Anyway, one more fun exercise, and I have to lean on you for this one because I'm ill prepared. I don't know if people know this, but I use my phone as my camera, and I don't have a stopwatch handy in time for our recording. So I'm going to ask you to use your stopwatch and put 30 seconds on the clock.
Yeah.
And tell me when you're ready.
Okay, I'll give you a 3, 2, 1. I'm going to hit it now at 33 seconds, and as soon as I say 1, we're at 30 seconds. Ready? What was the? What do I have to do again? What is it? What's the exercise again? Remind me.
Well, I haven't told you yet because it's 30 seconds on the clock.
Right.
Yeah, it's a bit of a surprise. 30 seconds on the clock.
Live because this might get strange. Okay. Okay. Ready?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1.
As many sales software tools as you can name in 30 seconds. Go.
Oh wow! Fathom, Boomi, Salesforce, Maximizer, Sugar, Zoho, Zapier, Shane's ChatGPT for sales coaching. Then we have Notion sales tool. In addition to that, we have LinkedIn and Sales Navigator.
Time's up. Not bad. Not bad. Could have gone anywhere with that.
There's most of them. That's funny.
Yeah. But nevertheless, you were never at a loss for what to say next. So I'd call that a win. And there's no losers in this game anyways.
Yeah.
Listen, Shane, tell me about Professional Sales Academy and the kinds of clients that you work with.
Yeah, so Sales Academy we're a sales performance organization. And we offer, depending on our clients, we'll start like the big picture. We've got a whole process of helping you build a sales system. But that includes all the pieces of what we do. So custom sales training, sales leadership training, sales leadership coaching, and then we've got online courses on demand for sales professionals. And, what that does all together. Then we've got sales enablement consulting and sales playbook development. So that's a very big picture that covers kind of the full sales enablement piece. We partner with organizations like Maximizer CRM, for instance. If a client needs a CRM, we might partner with them on a CRM implementation along with our solutions. So we're I wouldn't call us a one-stop shop, but a very integrated sales performance organization. Most of what we do starts with sales training or sales playbook development for clients. And then me personally, beyond running Sales Academy, I spend a lot of time keynoting at conferences on AI and the future of sales, the art of asking questions. That's what I do. Typical clients for us is varied. So most of our clients on our bespoke stuff, 20 plus salespeople, 30 million and more in revenues. That's kind of our business to business space. But with our online courses, any individual in sales, a founder, an entrepreneur can connect with us or access our one-on-one sales coaching, which I don't do a lot of anymore. Claudia Mason, who heads up our sales enablement and sales coaching side, she's our sales coach. So that's kind of what we do in a nutshell, but it's really about combining empathy and technology for sales results. That's what we do.
From one entrepreneur to another, you've built an incredible business. I love the fact that there is that passive revenue streams, I guess you could say, the subscriber, customer, client kind of, you have kind of all three revenue sources. I think that's wonderful. You should be very proud of yourself.
I was going to say, still the subscriber-based business, I find at this point, there's people who do it better than me, is still not automatic fully. There are some things that run through partnerships that they just generate registrations and it happens. But I find that, and you'll appreciate this from a marketing perspective, is what worked yesterday to fill your course will not work tomorrow. So you have to constantly evolve on like how you write your landing pages, how you're marketing and advertising it, what segments you're focusing on. So although it doesn't require dollars for hours to deliver, you still need a strong marketing and branding and thought leadership function, which is what keeps me up at night. Is always
it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work for sure. Yeah. It is its own full-time
I would love to say,
job.
I've got automatic cash. I just sleep, it comes in. But that's not the reality even for people who are successful at selling courses and subscriptions. I've
always felt like that stuff is like the calling card of sorts. Like it's never, there are people, I suppose, for whom that is a large chunk of their revenue. Mm-hmm. But anytime I've created courses or book or whatever, it doesn't need to be the primary source of revenue, but it's a nice conversation starter, or, it gets you in the room to sell the stuff that is a little bit more high ticket.
Well, and it's thinking more like blended learning versus online course is the way we often use because our program's like 20 hours of B2B sales training plus self-directed plus a final strategy. And it's a lot of work. So what we have is we've combined it with, instead of like one of my people going in and having to train you on here's how to do targeting and segmentation, here's how to do lead nurturing, you watch the video. And then our coach after that has a one-on-one with you on how you're going to implement it. So that process, that's how we do it with corporations, is they may buy 20 seats, but it's not like a one and done. The content's delivered that way, but the implementation is still done with the human touch. So it's not like fully scalable, but that's how we're selling most of our programs now, is like 10 or 20 at a time, combined with sales coaching. And then the odd person wanders in off the street, fills out a form, and they register themselves, right? But I'd love to flip that, where for every 20, people or 20 seats I'm selling, I get another 400 off the street. But right now, it's a lot of corporate clients who access our systems, right?
That's okay. I think in a world of AI, it's the non-scalable stuff that will have advantages as we go forward. I hope that makes sense. What I mean by that.
I agree. I agree. It's our differentiator.
It is. As long as we remain human and can continue to prove or differentiate ourselves from the AI, then I think that's a differentiator. How can somebody reach Shane if they want to contact you?
Straight up, let's start with email, shane@salesacademy.ca, SHANE. Visit salesacademy.ca, or @Shane Gibson on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram. TikTok's not @Shane Gibson, it's @Shane Gibson Live. But I'm @Shane Gibson on most things.
There's a guy who owns his namespace.
And then
we love it.
I've got a podcast at closingbigger.net that it's been running for a while. I do neglect it. I do a few episodes a year, but there's good content on there as well.
Podcasting regularly is hard, man.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, getting me on here and doing this with you as well. So
perhaps not as much as I appreciate you setting the time aside to join me today, Shane. I appreciate it very much. Thanks a lot for joining me. All right.
Awesome.